Premier. How are you? Let me call them. Keep them company. Cheers. Can we start?
Must be bright. Good enough chairs, all right.
Is there enough chair?
Hello.
I got high chair. So
I know exactly what you're
before you, the minister asked that you would let Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. Afternoon, everyone. I just have one apology from the Minister of Human Settlements. She'll not be joining us. But I am happy and glad to say everyone else is present. So, can I just take 2 minutes? Okay, thank you very much. So, as you're aware, this panel discussion is on affordable housing and infrastructure accessibility for all. And the relevance in relation to SIDS is that part of the SIDS program includes affordable housing. For the first part of what has been gazetted, there were a substantial number of social rental housing projects, which forms part of the affordable housing categorization. In the next iteration, there will be projects that will include the affordable housing ownership part of it. So that's where it is. So I think just to indicate, I mean, we all know that the affordable housing sector encompasses the market which focuses on between 3,500 and 22,500. It also represents the largest cohort of South Africans in respect of demand. We also know that it includes both rental and ownership, as I've indicated. And particularly important for the SIDS is the fact that the affordable housing sector, both rental and ownership, has been underpinned by a very strong public-private partnership. So in many respects, the affordable housing sector is private and public sector led funding, but also in relation to delivery, the primary deliverers are the private sector. And I think it's important to note that, and I'm sure that most of you here would probably have access to some of the digital publications, but I know that one of the panelists is going to give us some of the socioeconomic trends, but some analysis. So you'll know that with the high income sector, the affordable housing sector has probably been one of the more buoyant and resilient property sectors in the country. And sometimes when you drive through some of your cities, you'll see a number of these developments, but unbeknown to us, a lot of them either receive FLISP or some of them don't. There's also social rental, which receives some of the grants. So part of our discussion and the panelists will unpack this, and that's why we've assembled them in the way that they are, and we're glad to have the Premier of the Free State, Premier Dukane, welcome, to give us a perspective of the importance of affordable housing. But one of the key aspects with regards to SIDS has been the fact that the infrastructure provision has been one of those hurdles and bottlenecks which has prevented delivery. So you've got the demand, but the supply has not come on stream. So without, I mean, you're not here to listen to me. So on our panel, as I've indicated, we've got Premier Dukwana from the Free State. We've got Mr. Sandile Lutuli, who's the CEO of the Social Housing Regulatory Authority. We've got Bronwyn Williams, who's from Flux Trends, a social, cultural, and economic trend analysis focus. Dr. Cecil Medell, who's a senior lecturer of School of Architecture and Geomatics at UCT. Marius Engelbrecht, who's the senior strategy head for Africa for Hawaii Technologies. And one of the things that Marius has been asked to address is the perspective of pre-provisioning and rapid mechanisms for connectivity, and perhaps there'll be some takeaways on that part. And then Nsindiso Nduku, who is the president of the South African Council for Architectural Professions. One of the points that I think, need to address is the fact that in our subsidized and partially subsidized human settlements and housing delivery, there's been an absence of architects. And we'll try and unpack that, Mr. Nduko. So with your permission, I'm going to then hand over to the Premier. Premier Dukwana, you want to start?
No, thanks. Thank you. I think more than just looking at it broadly, one would like to just share the experience that one has in the province. We're talking of affordable housing, and we know, some of us as we speak, we say the Freedom Charter actually said there shall be houses and comfort for all. And the better part of the comfort, when we're speaking of the houses, and that is the part that has been neglected in many instances. And we're focusing in building these houses, social houses, etc. And we're still continuing with the mentality, if you look, especially in the townships, where the special planning framework or development framework actually allowed for the people and created a situation where the people were put in these as dormitories, and no infrastructure that was allowing them to realize or to self-actualize in terms of what they want to be, and they were just staying there and moving to work. And as we came in, building houses and all these things, in fact, in many instances, it has been perpetuating the same situation, and in many cases, it has actually, whilst you have built so many houses, but in terms of the infrastructure, that is very important. Let me make an example. When I speak about infrastructure, you would know that when it comes to your piping, your sewage network and all that, it actually goes also with regard to the houses is high income settlement, middle income settlement, and all that, and also the way these pipes or this infrastructure will be delivered would bring in that element. In many instances, you find in your townships, because they are low income settlement or houses, you're looking at the size of the house, but in the township, it's understood that this will be a small house, but the house is actually having more than 4 or 5 people in it, and you've got a sewer network that is not able to carry everything, as opposed to a house in the suburb, because of its size and the network that is put there, allows this and free flow. And when you look at what is happening now, you would find, in fact, we having communities that have sewer spillages everywhere, and these are new infrastructures, etc. But it is because they have not taken into consideration this reality, other than just looking at the size of the settlement, and also the fact that it is a high-income settlement. And it is also the way we have been dealing with this. We're taking our people and moving many of these poor people far and far away from amenities, and hoping that because they have these houses, this is all that they say they want. That's why I wanted to bring in the comfort element also, that it is really important that as we go on constructing and building this, we need also to take into consideration that we are building for houses for people who also would like to be happy, who would bring up families, who would have also need facilities, and not only the way we've been dealing with. We've been speaking about communities that are also unable to play a meaningful role in the economy. And many times we speak of township economy, but we know that you can't have that without mobility. And that means our streets, our roads, etc., there's a problem. And that is actually denying many people of an opportunity to play a meaningful role in the economy. And all these are actually pointing to the desire to do something good, but not looking at the other end that is actually creating more problems. And what we have found also is you build these houses, people are not working, and then they come in and then they sell the houses and they go back and settle in some inns, and then there's a problem. It continues and continues, and some have actually realized that there is something that they're gaining, and they've been moving all over, and then he gets a site, and then he leaves that, and then he sells it, and it has been happening. We have housed so many people, but if you go in some of these settlements, you will see that some of these people are actually people who can afford. The only thing is because we have not also attended to the need for land, special service sites, where we have received many requests that people are capable of building houses for themselves if they can be afforded these service sites. So all I'm trying to say to all of us as we deal with this, we need also to look into the reality that whilst we're building these houses, but we have neglected the comfort that goes with this, and what we have said in terms of amenities, and also how we are dealing with the problem. And the next issue that is very important to me is we've been talking about alternative building material, and not much work has actually been, in terms of research, there's a lot of work, but in terms of support, etc., that is not coming in. We're starting a project in one of our areas and we're looking at using your hempcrete, to hempcrete to actually begin to build houses that would also respond to the weather conditions, the climate conditions, and take into consideration the environment, and make sure that at least we've got houses that will be resilient to the challenges of weather and many others that we are confronting. So these are a number of things that I believe that we need also to have that dialogue, and have the financial sector playing some meaningful role. And I have also been confronted by a number of challenges that whilst we want to build a non-racial society, but there are many elements where also the financial sectors are actually not helping in realizing that. And because of your color, you stay in the same suburb, but the interest rate and the rate and whatever you pay is not the same. And these are issues that people have raised, and these are things that we need to face. And as we try to build a country, we need not to look at our people and say, because we are building for poor people and people who are indigent, etc., that we need to neglect the other side. That is very important. And those are the things that I just wanted to share with you as we speak about the esteemed panelists will be raising. And I'm just saying, this is the lived experiences of the people on the ground that I'm representing here. And as government of the Free State, we really want to change that, and we would like to get the support to those who have the muscle to help us change and repurpose the building of these houses in a better way. Also, this also speaks to the involvement of many other people, especially in the building material supply. It has a color factor also, and this burdens me raising this issue. We have not transformed the build industry at all, and this is something that needs to be attended to in the Free State. I can tell you there's only one black a business person who can supply building material. The MECs or people will tell you that there's 40% set aside for women, but in reality it's not 40% at all, because even if you give 40 million to the women in a project in the budget of 100 million, you give 40 million to women to do these houses. 70% of that money goes back to the male in the community. So it's not helping. We just say this, but up until we transform this industry, we're still going to experience challenges, and I hope I will learn a lot from the panelists.
Thank you, Premier. I'm going to now ask Bronwyn. Bronwyn, maybe you want to just give us some of the statistical overview.
We don't do too much of those statistical things, but we do a lot of qualitative research with business leaders, with communities, with young people, all the rest of it. And I think that the 2 points that I wanted to get through today are actually kind of the same point, but looked at from slightly different ways. Firstly, that when it comes to housing of any sort, whether it's formal, informal, whatever we want to talk about, we have to understand that, of course, that's part of, it's first and foremost not just a place that you live in, not just shelter, it's also the community that goes around it. And I think that the issues that I think are most important around informal housing at the moment are issues of safety and security, but safety and security from two levels. Firstly, of course, physical safety and security. In terms of service delivery, it's not just water, electricity, and sewerage, it's also, of course, a sense of safety and law and order in those establishments, right? Those rights should be comparable whether you are living in more formal housing or more informal type places. But the other side in terms of safety and security is economic safety and security that comes from your house and the place that you live in. If you are wealthier, your house, your home is a financial asset. You've got some security in terms of your rights and ownership over where you're living and the place that you live in. And that ownership also comes with a stake to, as I said, going back to the community level, to look after that community around it, because you have an actual investment in the prosperity of your community as soon as you have ownership over the property that you've invested your time in. And I think that that's perhaps something we need to look at in terms of title deeds and rights for the informal sector as well as for the formal sector. Because otherwise we're living in a very, very unequal society. We know it's unequal in terms of finances, but it's also unequal in terms of rights and the sort of responsibilities that go with it. I think these are really big wins and quick wins that you can have to get both those security layers together, and that when people have an actual ownership stake in the place that they live in, the community they live in, you're of course incentivized to look after that community, to look out for each other, because our prosperity helps me, right, going forwards. Those sorts of virtuous cycles are really something to look at. And that of course comes back to the work of Jane Jacobs. I think some people were talking a little bit earlier around planning. You were mentioning that, Neville, in terms of an architects getting involved in building these processes. I think that that can often actually go the other way around, that architects should be listening to people and looking at how people are living and then formalizing the structures around how people are working together, and then giving that sort of support structure around what's already growing to formalize that, and then to focus, as I said, really on that safety and security from a psychological level, an economic level, and of course a physical level.
Thank you. Dr. Medell.
Thanks, everyone. Okay, I think I'm an urban planner, so I'm going to give a bit of urban planning kind of perspective. I also started planning in 1990 when the liberation movements were unbanned. I also had the privilege the last couple of weeks to kind of looking at the kind of historic Cape Town and sort of pre-apartheid, but you actually know that separation and discrimination actually happened in Cape Town before that even. 1910 and way before that is so what I'm actually arguing for is that I think the bigger problem, I think we've got amazing technical expertise around affordable housing, people have got around finance and architectural and other engineering skills, but I think we're missing out for 30 years now, we're actually missing out the elephant in the room, which is the apartheid city model, which still persists in its present form after 30 years. And I think the point is, it actually, in fact, didn't come by accident. It actually came by design. It was actually purposely designed in Pretoria and other kind of places and enforced by the state. Okay, and it actually was a mechanism through hierarchy of planning. You get instruction from Pretoria that says, you build Nyanga Gugulet in this place, whether you like it or not. I must admit, as an activist in the 1990s, I actually thought we were a hierarchy of planning to reverse the apartheid planning. Okay, we've got spheres of government now, which means you can negotiate with the municipality. Could you actually have a township next to a wealthy area, and they could actually say no. And I think the problem is that we actually haven't really come to terms how to reconstruct, the apartheid state was a very specific state, and how I was reading through some literature in Cape Town, and it wasn't just about ripping people out of their livelihoods and their places of living. It actually was also a way of actually filtering people out. So people were actually separated in terms of income levels. So if you're the poorest person, you end up in Nyango, you end up in Manenberg. If you're more wealthy, you end up maybe in Athlone or Claremont. So just think about what it actually does for a housing market. Because the housing market is a market that actually obviously has filtering and segmentation, and you actually can then, it's a market that actually also operates in a very much mixed use, dense physical environment, which you actually have also in in other parts of the world, if it's in England or in the UK, there in actual fact affordable housing is the factors speak of municipalities and public sector. Here, if actually fact talk about affordable housing in the financial sector, then it's probably a communist or something like that. What I don't understand is, so our policy in terms of how we develop and look at it is more radical than we find to the West. So please don't compare us to the West, the Western cities. We're actually more to the right of that in terms of our housing and construction. We can't even compare to far in the West. Now, on a more positive note, we actually had amazing policies in our country that have been talking about this problem for many ages. If you're looking about the RDP, the BNG, the National Spatial Development Perspective, National Development Plan, IUDF, they all talk about what we should be doing. For example, consolidating land that is public, both in public spaces. It talks about how we can reintegrate and reconstruct our cities, that we should look at inner city areas and areas of public land. In Cape Town, you've got hundreds of hectares of land owned by the military. You know, Youngsfield, Wingfield, so it goes on, in the inner city land. We should be used for redevelopment, incorporating our communities, but we're not actually in fact looking at that. So I think the end of the day is now, I think particularly around the, because urban planning was really in the forefront of the apartheid city. They used urban planning in order to recreate the apartheid city. A lot of the policies we actually have, which is being ignored by the state, which I don't understand why, has actually very concrete suggestions, like the IEDF, for example, the NDP, about how we should consolidate land. When actually, I was involved as a consultant making, I think it was the early 90s, where we actually did an audit of all the public buildings in South Africa. All of them. I don't know what happened to that database. So we're not talking about land also. And that's the other thing, argument we haven't forgotten. We actually don't have an urban land reform strategy or policy. This thing about land, we should deal with land in an urban, in a farm situation, is not the same. And also in an urban area, it's not about the land, it's also about the buildings and the structures. So I think, but in urban planning, a little bit on that, I think what is important is we actually have mechanisms in planning that we can use. I mean, my belief is that additional, if you're actually talking about giving person additional rights, you know, we operate in a zoning scheme and with development rights. So if you're giving somebody a development, actually somebody asking a development rights to increase their rights in this country, in the Western, I'm talking about the West because we think that's radical. We're actually even more to the right of it. A right is not, a right is a privilege. If you're actually asking for additional rights for commercial retail development, the state has a right to say, you will now come to the party. You will cross-subsidize your infrastructure. You will also be public housing. But we don't do that. We think if a developer asks for rights, then we then have to, if we actually in fact oppose it, or we say, from a state perspective, you need to come to the party, the new kind of a socialist, et cetera, et cetera. So I think, so in the various planning mechanisms, we do have land-based financing. We do have, we can transfer development rights with also kind of mechanisms. We got things like investment. We always know you have to pay development levies when you have to do infrastructure. So there's so many tools and mechanisms in the state, which actually the state can intervene and change this very party structure, but it's not doing that. And I'm sort of coming to the end of my career. I'm being told in a couple of years I'm going to get lost. So I've spent my entire career fighting this imparted structure. And I get so frustrated that we're not doing something as a state. And we can be radical, but also pragmatic. Okay, then, so I think I'm asking for radical, pragmatic restructuring of urban areas. And there's a last note on this. South Africa, or Africa, South Africa more, it's the only country in the only continent and country in the world that, because we know that when you talk about economic growth and future prosperity, it's in our urban cities. It's sort of proved all over, everybody talks about it. But we're designing cities in a way which nobody has done like this. We're looking at South America, the West and East. The kind of cities we're building is uneconomical. The infrastructure, we know of every meter of pipe, water, sewage, you're going to pay more. And it's completely unsustainable. So I think at best we are definitely on a pathway of perfecting the apartheid state. And I can't understand why we're not getting out of this logjam of actually returning this massive problem we're going around. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Okay, just one statistic. I mean, if you look at the Gauteng City Region Observatory, 56% of the housing in Johannesburg has been in the south. So you all know where the south of Joburg is, right? But only 13% of the economic, either retail, commercial, or industrial, has taken hold there. So I think just the point of it. But then I'll come back to you, and I suppose maybe there's this other elephant in the room, right? Which we've always not wanted to speak about. And that's the expropriation. I mean, we must deal with it, Premier. So from a technical point of view, if you want to restructure, if you want to go into your towns and cities, Mangaung, some of the other areas, where there's a concentration of buildings, has that not prevented the Shra from upscaling CEO Lutuli?
Good afternoon, everyone. Mine is really about, that affordability conundrum, where, that confronts affordable housing, and to look at this. And what interventions government is trying to bring to the table around this particular subject. One has to look at this, or at least the way one is looking at it, it's both from a supply side as well as the demand side. Now, if one looks at the supply side of this, there's various factors that contribute towards the cost of any development. The one that the Premier mentioned is the issue of bulk infrastructure. You know, putting up bulk infrastructure can be an extremely expensive exercise. And from a human settlements perspective, there's various instruments that have been brought to the table to assist in this regard. One of those is the HSDG grant, which gets made available to metros and provinces to enable this to actually happen and happen at scale. There's the issue of land costs, the second element to it. Land, and I'm not going to go into the expropriation debate as yet, but land is becoming increasingly prohibitive. Now, purposefully, an institution like the HDA was established for purposes of acquiring strategic pieces of land that can then be used for spatial transformation purposes. So releasing that land from an HDA perspective, releasing that land from a government as the owner of the land, municipalities as owners of the land, becomes quite important as we try and transform spaces in which this is happening. Another element is project preparation as well as packaging costs. Those who are in the professional space will know what it takes to bring a project to bankable feasibility. It can be very expensive. Layer onto that development levies that the good professor has spoken about, which have become a significant revenue generator for municipalities. And you find that some projects actually don't get over the line precisely because of these costs on the supply side. Once you get through those hurdles and you enter into the construction phase, there can be inefficiencies and leakages that are occasioned by shoddy and poor workmanship. That adds on to, this is the invisible layer of cost that can creep into your project. From a human settlements point of view, it becomes important that you have an institution like an NHBRC who can come in when things go wrong and intervene. So that regulatory aspect of the NHBRC becomes critically important in trying to lower and manage those costs. But from a financing point of view, an institution like the Social Housing Regulatory Authority, institutions like the NHFC, can come in with concessionary funding that can be used to actually blend with other sources of finance. So you bring in concessionary funding and you have a blended kind of package that ultimately contributes towards having a sustainable type of project. However, there are also additional costs when one turns now to the supply side of this equation. And what are those costs? You've now built, whether it's a PNG house, whether it's a social housing project, whichever one it is. There could be just simple bond registration costs. That's why purposefully government has taken the view to exempt houses below a certain value so that they can make it affordable for people to actually have this. Interest rates can be extremely prohibitive. In the rental space, which is where I operate, issues like lease administration costs, can be prohibitive for quite a number of people. Rates and taxes, when these projects are actually developed from a municipal space, can compromise the sustainability of all of these projects. So the issue of affordability, as I move towards the end, is one that we need to look at very critically if we are to deliver at scale and deal with the backlog that has been created over years. I must say, though, that with all of these challenges, I think government has done well. Delivering 4.7 million houses since 1994 is actually unprecedented by no mean feat. I don't think that there is anywhere in the world where this has actually happened in the scale that it has happened. With all the challenges that are there, it is still doable. And hoping that in this process, we'll be able to find solutions to actually unlock this further. So thank you very much, Neville.
Okay, so I'm going to ask Nsindiso. You heard everything. You want to contextualize your...
Thank you very much, Neville. Yes, thank you. I've heard all of you, and I can simply say that the solution to this problem is a design. It's only a design. If we can put the design ahead of everything, we can actually involve architects in the design of human settlement. It was called human settlement for the purpose of not only looking at the units that you deliver. You're looking at the whole settlement. You're talking urban infrastructure. You're talking how your houses are positioned. You're talking at the different typologies that can be employed. You're talking at different tenure options that can be provided in one space. Segregated approach, which stems from the apartheid legacy, should come to an end. I think we should look forward and integrate our society, where all of us stay together and probably looking at other principles and even change the meaning of the density, what density means. Maybe if you're talking of density, if you've achieved your density, you need to be considerate of different households, different income levels, staying in one place, not the others staying that side 50 kilometers away from the places of opportunities. The others, those that are richer, are actually placed closer to the work and places. And then the segregation, which is through the urban planning, which was actually spearheaded by the apartheid planning, where you come up with developments or settlements that are not mixed use. So you stay here, you take a transport that will travel 50 kilometers, and then you spend all your exposable income on transport. And by the time you get your salary, you are left with nothing. So architecture is a solution to this problem. And as you all are aware, that architects have not been involved in the design of affordable housing. And if you understand the value chain of built environment professionals, the planning, how the planning works, architects are at the top of the pile. Architects have to conceive everything ideally. I can actually assimilate it to the orchestra, the conductor of the orchestra. If we talk about it in a musical sense, that is known to everyone. The conductor has to understand each and every part, each and every instrument to reach harmony, you know. At the end, when you listen, you hear this nice song, but it has bits and pieces within it. The only person that makes it listen or sound nice and interesting to an ordinary ear there is the conductor. Architect are those people that are actually trained to conduct. They are good collaborators because we design, we hand over to the engineers, quantity surveyors. They can't move without architects. But the solution to the housing problem has been engineered. That is why it has not yielded any positive results. But now it needs to be design-oriented. It needs to use architects. Architects are there to actually create spaces that invoke happiness. It's architects who can do that. No one else can do it. And that is the opportunity that really we're asking for as architects, that just give us a pilot project and we show you, we demonstrate what we can do. Because it's not about the number of units in stands, it's about how you connect, how the relation between those units, the relation between the street and the unit, how you use the most, the common denominator of movement mode, which is walking. So we're designing cities. The cities must be livable, they must be walkable, they must be safe and healthy, so we can provide that through design. If we design with that understanding, you know, we are the big collaborators, and then also the principles of participation, participatory design. We are those individuals who can lead that process of the design, because we don't claim to have design solutions. Design solutions are with the users, but we are the guiders who can guide the community. We can get you know, ideas from the community. We can collaborate with the other disciplines, with engineers, with quantity surveyors, with everyone. So that is the skill that we have. And we are the ones who coordinate all the work of others. But now, where did we lose it? Where have we lost it? You know, that now we are at the end, we are not even involved. So now we are going to have this kind of human settlements, the so-called human settlements, that are not really making our citizens happy. They are not affording any opportunity for their kids to walk alone on the streets because there's no safety factor. You know, so there is a lot that we can offer. You know, the principles that we can use, you know, in conjunction with the urban designers, where we design for a mixed use. You stay here, you work here, you play here. So you don't have to stay here and take a bus 50 kilometers to work and come back and take another bus to a place of recreation. It goes deep into the pockets of the poor. So if we can address a fundamental factor, which is that of equity. Equitable means that it is affordable to the poorest of the poor. That is the movement, the movement mode, which is walking. So if we can structure our human settlements around the movement, and then from there permeates the space, the interface between the walking and the buildings. From there, you create spaces of safety. When you walk, people or kids are actually walking up and down the street, you have no worry, because the orientation of those units are actually contributing towards the monitoring of who is in the street, who are the strangers there on the street that are actually creating problems for our kids. And ourselves, when we walk there, we will have no fear of being mugged, because the way we design, the way we orientate buildings is not about the units, the number of units that have been delivered on site. It is about how you integrate the city, how you avoid urban sprawl by making sure that where you identify a piece of land, it must be a mixed use, there must be accommodation, retail, social infrastructure, schools are here, health centers are here, and everything is here. But with my colleagues here, Shra, we would definitely want to get involved, maybe sign an MOU, and with you as architects, just to probably give us an example, a pilot project. We can demonstrate what we can do. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you know, I was pleasantly surprised the other day, and this is not about bashing planners, right? But I was pleasantly surprised that in South Africa, the planners are not regulated. They're the one profession that has got a self-regulatory mechanism. And the issue is they form the key basis of what we have today. You know, the apartheid state that was designed pre-94 and built post-94. And I'll come back to it, and we can look at how we can knit it. But Maurice, you're gonna give us a perspective in relation to particularly just some of the inability for us to embrace new technology.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today. It's really a privilege. Yeah, I think what is important for us is we would like to see each and everybody be able to participate in the digital economy. And that starts with connectivity. So it's all good and well to give houses and to build these houses, but you cannot really participate. And we learned that lesson when COVID hit us, because it was the connectivity that ensured continuity for us, right? Some of us were privileged enough to keep on working from home, education, etc. during those lockdown periods. So what we fast-tracked on for the last number of years on the continent is I've been advocating pre-provisioning and rapid deployment and infrastructure mechanisms that allows us to connect everybody. And that includes the unconnected, the unserviced areas, those deep rural areas. First of all, it is a myth that the technology does not exist. We've got a vast portfolio of technologies that allow us to connect, but we need support. And how do we do that? Legislation and regulations need to be put in place, policies, bylaws that allow us to do these things. We've had great successes in the last couple of years. Ivory Coast as an example, it is mandatory now that all new buildings must make provision for fiber connectivity. So the legislation was changed as well as the building codes. Kenya, they are in process of signing off on Parliament on the same structures that allow that connectivity to happen. And then in Nigeria, we saw the implementation of infrastructure sharing mechanisms like DIG1's policies. They've created a standard, a national standard that addresses wayleave cost structures and mechanisms. And all of these things again help us and assist the operators then to actively go where they need to go. South Africa, prime example. I see Mr. Dietlof Maria is, I think, in the next session. First prepaid fiber model in the world. We proved to the world, and Cape Town, Mitchell's Plain, that's where they did it actually, moved in there, and fiber pre-provisioning now, with our pre-provisioning technologies and mechanisms now, we've got prepaid models, which shows us that we can even take fiber connectivity, which allows that child in that area to have the same privileges and accessibility to information, education, etc., than the one that is there in Oxford, right? So that's what we're advocating. So we ask government to please work with us. Let's do it together as partnerships. Let's get those mechanisms in place. In South Africa, for the last couple of years, we are striving to do a couple of proof of concept trials so that we can support our business case. Already I've engaged extensively with the private sector. They're actually kicking off a project this month, which I should be able to have a use case within the next couple of months that will support our case in South Africa. And then from government side, obviously, we ask them to take hands with us and talk with us and see how we can do this and get the private sector involved and the operators to support this. Thank you very much.
So if we gave you a project in the Free State to work with, would you be able to do that?
If we get the right support, if we get an operator on board, yes. We're more than
But you must get the operator on board, not us.
Let's talk.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I'm just. No, I think we need to walk out of here. And I suppose the point you want to know why, because you see the thing is that in relation to SIDS, part of what SIDSSA wants to do is to upscale and include the affordable housing sector into the next iteration. So SIDS 2025, you take all of that infrastructure that those 12 projects that you have, and next year becomes about human settlements and construction. So you've heard part of that. So I'm not sure from the audience, and I suppose this is about you, right? So you're going to put some points. Okay, so can I get a set of hands and then I'll, okay, so 1, 2, 3 for now.
Thank you so much, Neville. I'm Zimbini Hill and currently with the Energy Group. I really do appreciate these conversations and thank you. I think I probably just want to pick up on some of the issues that Dr. Seville mentioned, which are, sorry, Seville being the first name. I think he's mentioned some important issues because we are here representing individual entities as some of the panelists. And I suppose one then can always just maybe be siloed in their approach and only think about their individual entity. And there's some key policy issues and the lack of collaboration from a government perspective. That means that we're focusing on the relevant things. And I'll pick up just one. If we're talking about affordable housing, we are in fact housing the employed. And so it becomes, the spatial planning becomes important and the place of work becomes important. So if our first priority is to find a piece of land and build, we haven't quite gone and worked out where are they going to work, where are the kids going to go to school, where's the clinic, where's everything. Because the entity dealing with the delivery is only focusing on their portion of the delivery. So how do we get to a point where we are sitting as partners to say we have one of the highest unemployment rates in the world. And if we're building affordable housing, we're building affordable housing for people who are working. How does government and policymakers ensure that industry exists? Because it can be a bottomless pit where we're building housing for no one. So how do we ensure that industry exists and we build housing within where either industry is or where the industry will be? So I thought to just pick that up if I may.
Thank you, Program Director and colleagues. My name is Lufuno Ratsiku. I am the President of the SACPCMP, the regulatory body for construction project managers, primarily. Chair, mine is just 2 inputs. I think the rest of them, I flashed them off because they are already touched. I think we are missing an opportunity to enhance our capacity to deal with the upgrade of informal settlements programs, the UISPs. And the reason I'm specifically zooming into those is because with UISPs, you are able to upgrade a community that had no hope in terms of the quality of their infrastructure and take them on another level. And potentially when you deal with that, you are also likely to eradicate the illegal immigration problems that you have, because when you do that, you register people on a roll. If they are in the country from elsewhere, you formalize them. How did they come here? For those that came with wrong ways, you eradicate them. Then you are able to deal with the criminal elements. So the point that he spoke about of settlement, you are not only putting the housing units there, but you are addressing the lifestyle issues. But second to that, as part of my advocacy, when you do that, you must maximize the use of registered professionals. The reason why is of professionals. If we want to see, and each of us operates a person, everybody be bridge when to be bridge, it's a problem. So let's look at this element of transformation as throwing everybody where they don't belong. I'm not an IT expert, and B. And if I get that opportunity, I must respect it by working with appropriate people. Lastly, Chair, is the issue of the proof of concept studies that he touched on, but I think on key human settlements programs, all of them must be initiated by proof of concept study. You cannot award somebody to build 4,000 houses without them testing at least 20. Because if the methodology is wrong, it's going to be wrong for 4,000. Rather you test them with 20, let them submit a proof of concept study report, then you say we are approving the methodology, or no, we are not approving the methodology. Out of 4,000, you've messed up 20, we still have an opportunity to correct. But flooding a contractor with 4,000 houses, no tested capacity, that's where our chaoses are also coming from. Thank you, Program Director.
I'm going to take 5 and then we'll just get the panel to comment.
I'd just like to thank the panelists. My name is Zola Khaga and I am a professional architect, currently working in community development with Exaro. And from what the panelists have given, affordable housing or housing humanity is a complex area and there is no one size fits all. I agree with the colleagues who have spoken now around having appropriately registered, qualified people and the right people around the table in collaborating to get to the solutions. It is not, we should, I believe we should steer clear of territorialism. We have humanity, human settlements, and without the appropriate participants being given the appropriate spaces at the table, we are literally having a tick box approach of a numbers game. 47 million houses is an impressive number, but are those impressive communities that have been built? And so I'd just like to say, instead of just looking at it as a human settlement, let us look at it as humane settlements, where you have the comfort, the beauty, the joy, the prosperity, the sustainability catered in, and have all the relevant participants getting the space, including architects.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for your contribution. I'm from Sierra Leone, okay, and I came in since 1996. I was funded in this country. I wasn't funded by my government, taxpayers' money. But I see this as an albino economy, which is skewed towards Westerners. Some of us are not here because of economic reasons. Some of us are here because of political reasons, instability in our countries. We've got a lot of skills to offer to this country. We're here to support our black brothers and sisters, and also good white people in this country. But I see people sometimes focus on us as we're here to take jobs. The problem in this country is STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, which in West Africa, we are vast in that. When it comes to science and technology, mathematics, I think we are far ahead. I lecture mathematics at CPUT. I did my master's and PhD at UCT, and in the area of explosive engineering, structural engineering, but sometimes some of us do not have the opportunity to work. And don't think I'm going back to Sierra Leone, because sometimes there's war and all these other things. I go to Canada, I go to America, and you are the loser. Why did you fund me in the first place without using me in this country? Why can't you sign an agreement with foreigners who come here, let them go to Polokwane in the remotest of villages and teach and pay back to this country? Rather than say I'm here to take, I will go, no problem. But you never see my skills in this country again. You are losing. I think we need to look at this holistically. We're talking about African Union, not South African Union. We are here to give so much to this country, and that's one of the reasons I'm here. My kids are born here, but some of them have not even been given papers. And when they grow up, where do I take them? To Canada. Who loses? I think we need to look at this thing holistically. The premium, summarize everything. I'm not going to repeat whatever I said, but I would love to have a discussion further with that. In terms of affordable, let me just wrap up. Affordable housing means you need to look from answer to some. How much can this afford? Can I go back to my architecture and look at what can be provided? What kind of architecture and engineering is needed to make sure that I meet that 75,000 rands or whatever? So I think we need to look at this thing, sit around the table and let's discuss, rather than allowing me to go elsewhere with these skills. You've educated me. Please, I need to give back to this country. I owe this country. This country doesn't owe me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, and thanks to the panelists for the information shared. I would like to start off with saying that it costs us more to maintain a challenge than to actually solve it. I'm a global social entrepreneur that look for challenges to solve in society, and my focus areas is the quality of housing and affordability thereof, road infrastructure, and renewable energy. So I love innovation and technology, and I've partnered with companies that have the innovative products in all three of those areas. And all three of the products that I currently have are basically the next best thing. When we look at the product for housing, for instance, there were talks of the affordability of housing, the quality of housing. The product that I have is not a new product. It's been around since 2002, and there's so many alternative building methods. But this one specifically was designed to solve Africa's challenges when it comes to affordability and the quality of housing. Seismic properties as well can resist a hurricane on the Richter scale of about 9. So there's so many good qualities that these products have. Also, cuts on all three products that I have, cuts on time of construction, it cuts on cost as well, and on construction time, for instance. So you can build more, you can train more people on this concept so that more houses can be built in a short period of time. So yeah, I just wanted to say that there's opportunities out there, there is solutions out there. It's just that everybody, as it was said, everybody needs to work together to be able to implement these solutions, as well as the regulations that is currently there with government. Why do they not then say, this is not working for us, so can't we do something about it and bring about change? Because with innovation, things change, things become better. Yeah, so that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Susan Bulon. I'm from the CIDB. I think a lot of the issues that we have currently in the built environment can be resolved by means of the integrated development planning. I think that will address the apartheid city as Cecil mentioned. I think the intention of the IDPs at the municipality the initial intention is nowadays it's not like that anymore. I think the municipalities use the IDP to just populate their budgets, and I think the initial initiative behind IDPs by means of which you can use it as a tool to create something better than and to change your apartheid cities. I think that is not what we have today. So I think we must relook the integrated development planning process, and I think that will definitely contribute to a better sustainable human settlements.
Thank you. My name is Kuli Lenzo from CIDB. I think if I'm hearing the message here, it's actually quite simple and straightforward. It's more on collaboration and coordination. As my friend Mr. Nduku has said there, that we need to work and play in the same place. And I also understood, Premier, that he doesn't want his bedroom too far from his office. So he wants to work and play in the same area. But on a serious note, Premier, my question goes to you. I think one of the issues that we have, especially in government, is the coordination and the collaboration. We have all these different entities, SRA, your housing, your public works, and what we're hearing here is that these need to work together. I'm not sure whether from your province perspective you've identified this challenge, and if you have, what is your vision going forward? Especially when we have potential investors in this environment, it needs to change, and what do you see the vision going forward? Thank you.
Panel? Is it?
Hi everybody, my name is Kaylee and I am with the South African Council of the Architectural Profession. Something simple that I would just like to mention to all of us. If this week coming, we have a public holiday, we call it a public holiday, but it's actually Human Rights Day. We all know what happened on that day, so we're not going to go into that. But in our country, the minute something is a human right, it's important. It becomes, you put everything into it. So can we not agree, 7 people here and a couple of us at the back, that good design should be a human right? Because the minute it becomes that, we are all going to pay attention to it. You, Mr. President, will be talking to you, and you, and you. Everybody will all of a sudden be talking to each other. And I think the minute we can do that, we can move forward. The next thing I'd like to say is, we've been talking about housing delivery, housing backlog, housing. Should we not change the narrative? Because the minute you change your narrative, your thought processes change. So should we not be saying human settlement designs, good human settlement designs? That's basically it.
Hi, Derek Illman in the affordable housing space. I think that the one thing that I just want to say is that I think what was said earlier, we have to take into account the end user, the community, and any building technique or technology must not hinder that end user from expanding their house, not expanding their opportunity to add another room, add anything. So we need to take into account construction materials that are available and that can be used. So just a point on that.
Hi, how are you doing? My name is Khotatso Meka. I work for Cosmopolitan Projects and Central Developments. I'm an executive director there and a managing partner. I must say I've got some mixed feelings having come to this whole symposium, because on the one hand it's fantastic because South Africa, we're one of the few countries in the world where you can name our top 4 or 5 problems and each of them are solvable within a decade. I'm currently doing a fellowship with MIT where we look at we travel to different countries looking at ecosystems and how they interact, because they've mapped out the whole world and they've identified the 5 stakeholders that are necessary for innovation and entrepreneurship to thrive. And that is entrepreneurs, big corporates, universities, risk capital, and government. And very luckily this year they came, the other fellows came to South Africa, and this was one of the countries that we actually analyzed the ecosystem. And first of all, we actually have all 5 stakeholders. Not a lot of countries do on this continent, except we don't interact with each other. And we've gotten this far in South Africa with the 4 out of 5 stakeholders doing very well, and like excluding government out of it. But I think we've maxed out our growth without including government in fixing this country. But that's a two-way process, you know. So I said I'm a property developer, and we do it at large scale. So all my business partners are white. You know what I'm saying? So I go to these meetings, and you have the private sector, which is a synonym for white, and they're all talking to each other. They have meetings like this. Then I come here, and I see the government. We're all talking alone with each other, and I'm like, how do each of you think you're gonna like implement fixing these structural problems individually? They don't trust each other, and I hold both equally accountable. You know, right now, our company from 1992, we've delivered over 75,000 houses. We deliver an average of 4,000 or 5,000 houses per annum. To be a developer, I appreciate your example of a conductor, because that's actually also what I tell them, is you have to conduct the entire process. The entire process. Each and every single thing from and that's what we do. We've had to like build all of these things in-house, from land development, doing due diligences, feasibilities, project management, have your own construction company, have your own fiber and ISP provider. We have our own sales teams. We have our own property management, the whole thing. And then I come here and I realize that there's all these individual government units, and everyone wants to tell you as a private developer what would be commercially viable for you to come help. So SHRA, for example, I think is probably, SHRA and FLISP are probably the most important institutions in the housing space. 40% of our clients utilize FLISP, as broken as it is, and that is a game changer in the market. SHRA, developers like myself, we've just formed the South African Multi-Family Residential Rental Association, which I'm a co-founder of and on the board, and that's the 13 biggest landlords in the country. Only, I think, 2 are doing social housing. We need to be able to engage, and we need to be able to fix it and make it viable. We wanna participate. I mean, out of all 13 of us, we're sitting on billions of rands, and we're operating in the private market, which is going well, but we want to go lower. We want to be able to cater, because these are people, these are our clients. If you're selling 5,000 houses, it means I've gone through 100,000 applications, and I've had to turn back 95,000. We know that that market is there. So I'm saying we need a way to bridge that gap between private sector, government, black and white, and solve this problem together. There's many things that we can learn from you. There's many things that you can learn from us. And let's just fix the damn problem in this country. And housing is, unfortunately, we don't have the luxury to operate in isolation. It's the only department where you got to work with water. You got to work with roads. You got to work with sanitation. You got to work with every, and that's what I do for a living across multiple municipalities. And I'm saying, I'm offering to be part of the solution. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Pindogutle Sikosana. I am from the Cape Peninsula University of Technology. Yeah, I just wanted to raise a question in terms of, we are urbanizing, and we're speaking about the housing backlog and, how urbanization has an impact on, our infrastructure and development, in South Africa. And my question is, what about the reality faced in rural areas? What is the impact, they are facing and the lives that they are experiencing, and how are we trying to create sustainable rural human settlements? I know there's subsidies that are available, such as your rural subsidies. Again, those subsidies, I don't know if I can say controlled or administered by your traditional leaders, because the fact is most of the land in rural areas is, still traditionally owned. So, how are we trying to create, rural human settlements? Why are we not seeing our traditional leaders in these spaces where, they can engage, and try to bring some form of integration between, institutions, whether it's government institutions, private institutions, and traditional leaders? Because in many rural areas, they face that issue of there's no integration between the two. Hence why a lot of the development projects and programs that, are available in rural areas are not being implemented, because of that clash. So yeah, my question is basically what are we doing about the reality faced in rural areas when we are seeking to create sustainable rural human settlements? Thank you.
Okay. Panelists, we have 15 minutes. Okay, so you want to start?
Yeah, let me start with the fresh one. Thank you very much. Yeah, the rural areas, when you talk sustainable design approach or sustainable human settlement, the principles are there. All we need expertise to go to collaborate with chiefs, traditional leaders, and because the community are there. The participation and the collaboration amongst the community, rural areas are more of a community than individuals. So some of the principles are there already. We just need to actually enhance that by involving expertise, so that when we assist or when we collaborate with them, we start showing them how important it is to be connected. How do you make it easy? For an example, from I'll say from Kumbu to Amtata, for an example, what sort of infrastructure can you put in place to make sure that you go to Amtata and do whatever you want to do and come back within 2 hours, and without having to spend the whole day because of the poor transport system that is not related or does not enhance or assist you to go into your business, because that is the structural system that we have now at the moment. But now we need to go back and retrofit or look at how do we make it make a sense, how do we intervene as government and expertise to try and work backward and achieve what we should have achieved earlier on, because architecture was exercised or done without architects. I mean, in the rural areas, we're talking architecture without architects, vernacular architecture. Those people are using their intuitive ideas and knowledge, indigenous knowledge, that we should leverage on, that we've completely forgotten about it. We've run away with Western ways of providing housing or dealing with our own infrastructure. So if we can actually do a research, potential PhD studies there to actually unearth the knowledge, indigenous knowledge systems that are there existing, that are addressing the issues and the challenge of sustainable development that we're having in urban areas. That probably might lead to addressing the issues of urbanization, slow it down, because we can't stop it, because there are no opportunities in rural areas. You have to go to the places of opportunity in order to live. Unfortunately, that is the situation. But if we can, moving forward, start coming up with principles and ideas of trying to address the issues of migration urbanization to actually create sustainable settlements and homes in the rural areas. For an example, housing is not an issue in the rural areas, and I've seen RDP homes being built there, and housing is not an issue. It is a collaborative process. It is a process. If you are a young couple who just got married, you just build your rondavel, one which is good enough for you and your wife, and then you have a child, you build another rondavel. It's incremental in nature. So if we can approach the housing delivery in an incremental approach, where the infrastructure is delivered, and then the people come in and finish the rest of it, and it will actually reduce the cost, because what we're looking at the holistic delivery of the unit, rather than approaching it incrementally, and then you sort of add according to your needs. So we want to have an end product. So we are focusing on outcome rather than the process. So we've forgotten the process, and the rural, settlements are about the process. If we can bring back the approach of process into the delivery of housing, then we will probably alleviate the issues of cost that is upfront. It's huge upfront, because that is the main stumbling block. So if we can implement it incrementally, that might give us solutions. Thank you.
Anything from your side?
Yeah, I think the one thing that was kind of missing from today's conversation is the actual stakeholder in the room, actually the residents and the people that would be living in affordable housing. And I think that it comes back to my opening comments around including communities in these decisions rather than imposing solutions from the top, because there's often more efficient ways that are done by people living on the ground in those communities, in those spaces, that know what the real problems are. The most urgent problems to be solved are the problems that the people living in those spaces identify, as opposed to the problems that we identify from the outside kind of looking in. Because we've heard from architects, we've heard from policy designers, we've heard from all sorts of designers here how we would solve the problems, but I almost feel like we're not necessarily the right people to even be starting these conversations with. But that would be my closing comment.
Just to pick up where Bronwyn left off, and this is a term that has been used today, the triple Ps. I think we need to move away from that terminology to add an additional P, which is the people. Public, private, and people partnership. Because they're a critical stakeholder. But I want to address the issue of the trust deficit between the public and private. One of the concerning things that has, and you can look at the statistics over time, is that the business confidence index in South Africa has been on the decline for a sustainable number of years. And it speaks to exactly the trust deficit that you are speaking about. But how do you reverse that? And it is through platforms like these that you begin to do that. But it's not really about talking about these things. It's about demonstrably delivering on those projects, all right? Which then instills confidence both from a private sector perspective, but also, nudges and pushes government to play its catalytic role in ensuring that things actually do happen. If you listen to the president talking, and it was almost like a report card about what has happened with some of these projects, how through purposeful intervention, whether through SIDSSA or the infrastructure fund or some of the key role players in the infrastructure space, projects have moved a lot faster through the value chain than has hitherto been the case. So these are incremental steps, but they're there. You can see them, and I can proudly say that in the address this morning, the President spoke about 10 of the projects that we, as the Social Housing Regulatory Authority, put up. 7 of them are either completed or in construction at this stage, you know, and that's from 4 years ago. So, you know, hopefully that gives you a sense that we are willing to engage, and we are willing to engage with partners that have a common vision with us, that take their delivery responsibility very seriously, and we'll work together with you. Yeah.
Chairman, I'll be short because I know we're running out of time. Just 2 comments. We actually are regulated by the South African Council of Town Regional Planners, so there's a regulatory body. It was actually a part of its structure. It's a statutory body. The statutory regulations, and it actually was an act of parliament that actually was in place. But I think the other point I want to make is that I think it is actually I'm one of the people who really as an urban planner, I think architects have been missing in that space, and I think they can make a massive kind of contribution. But I just want to, planning has in sort of been land use management, but also there's sort of spatial planning, and there's a lot of literature and work that has been done in what makes a good city. So it don't exclude the planners from that. I just want to get back to Mr. Chairman quickly before you close down around the kind of regional topic, which is affordable housing, and maybe respond to that speaker's comment, I think. And what is the status quo around that? Because we haven't really kind of talked about that. I think obviously we know there's been the inclusive housing policies that some certain municipalities and cities have been formulating. There's not a national policy. A lot of municipalities, like even the city of Cape Town, has not been adopted. Then obviously in that, there's been a lot of ideas being formulated in how to actually make it practically work. In the IUDF is full of it, for example, about land banking, about value capture, all the kind of tools around it. So a lot of those kind of tools and mechanisms have not been formulated. And we actually had these strategies in Joburg, where the state, massive old land buildings within the city, which is perfect for affordable housing, is not actually being captured. So the state hasn't come on board and formalized that policy and integrated it and actually put the mechanisms of the financial, institutional kind of mechanisms to actually make it work. So there's a massive lag in that. And I think some of the comments made, some of the comments before, is that we do have, in broad terms, the sort of housing segmentation, that sort of 3.5 to 20,000. We know that a lot of those people are within existing townships. They are kind of common workers. They secure jobs, and those probably is your market you're talking about. How do you actually access the market? So how do you get that market segmentation and filtering? Because there's housing filtering. That's what sort of property developers talk about. So one of the techniques that I work up in my teaching is that engaging with the property developer, looking at understanding how does feasibility studies work, how does cost calculation work, and then then our students have to engage with the property developer. How can you make that project viable? Can I come on board with faster land use management or faster planning approvals, which because time is quite expensive? Can I come with development kind of costs around it? Can I actually look at land value capture, where some of the value being created by creating an infrastructure also being accorded to that? And what is the issues then about affordable housing? We have a lot of debates in this 10%, 50%, which also is kind of problematic from perspective. So I think maybe to answer your question, and the speaker at the back to talk about some of the planning tools like IDP, which has also been problematic. But IUDF talk about making that a compulsory, legally binding contract to municipalities. So I think the point is, I think with the architects, actually, don't take me in the wrong way, but a lot of the debates about what is the problem for a part of the city, what makes a good city and good spaces, actually has been extensively been debated. I'm not saying it's not concluded. Read the BNG. The BNG is amazing, and look at the NDP. So what makes a good city? It's actually been talked about. The question is, why is that not happening? And I think that's your questions. What are the tools? What is the land? And I think that's where we are in the debate. How do you get the mechanisms, the tools, the financial mechanisms around it? I'm not saying we shouldn't have the debate, but I think it's quite important. So I think that's where my last word, and I think the state has for some reason abandoned this inclusive housing policy, and nobody's taken ownership of it, there's no one taking it. And as a basis, if I was the state, for me, the policy that I feel really has made a lot of difference in my life, understanding what we should be doing, is the IUDF. And I think the IUDF is completely underrated. I think all of us should go back to the IUDF and look at what has been said, what has been promoted, and implement this stuff. Thanks.
No, thanks. Operating in this space that one has for quite a long time, one thing that I've realized is the way many of us will look at things, and sometimes forget reality. The problem in South Africa is also, it has to deal, as you rightly look at it, the willingness, in some people also letting go of what they, that has been there, the supremacy that you think you have and the privileges that you think only belong to you, whilst we all speak about building a better country. There is that willingness in others to move, but others are really not prepared to move, and it becomes a problem that how do you build? You can't put laws to regulate behaviors, etc., of people. Some of these things, as they happen genuinely, I believe some of the leaders got into this settlement believing that they want to build a better country, but others were coming in not prepared to do that, and pressure to really deal with the suffocation that they were not growing, and therefore they needed the sanctions to be lifted up, but there was no willingness to actually build the country, and that is what you see happening. The system itself is actually choking many very good people who are prepared to do things, but the system always gets into the space, and unless we deal with this animal, this is the system that we have, we're not going anywhere. We can have all the good laws coming in, but people have prepared thoroughly for us, and this is where we need to really shape up and deal with this. But collaboration, and that's very important. The danger is people come in, the experts, the people don't want to learn. So we need to really unlearn and relearn, and that is the best way, and collaboration, it will help us. But there has to be an understanding that all of us have to build this country, and we must contribute, all of us, in building this country. It is not the only responsibility of some race that must push, and others are not willing to actually bring their side on the table. And that is the problem that I personally, and I believe many of you, have actually come to experience.
Thank you, everyone. Let me just thank everyone for their participation, especially the members of the panel. So I think it's been a very fruitful discussion. I think just my last part is that I think a lot of South Africans, we forget that there was a golden years post-1994. We weren't always in the space that we are now. If you look at the period between 1994 and 2008-9, there was a huge amount of good in terms of development, in terms of policy, and things worked. So the question we need to ask ourselves is, well, without pointing fingers, what went wrong, when did they go wrong, and how do we fix it? Because I think if we, and we must not go back to the pre-94, because I think in this whole debate, particularly around housing and human settlements, we must be very, very, very conscious of the fact that between 1994 and 2008, South Africa was a very different country to what it was on the 26th of April 1994. And I think it's important that we just maybe say, should we not go back to the basics of what we did then? Collaboration was an important part. It was forced. It was managed. But in many respects, I think it's something that we just need to. And I suppose the SIDS colleagues will come back to those of us here. And I suppose just as I leave you, it's about the issue around the trajectory. So when we leave here, what are some of those things that we want to put on the table that gets us to a more, because that's the biggest cohort, as I indicated, of households. Thank you. I think
Want to ask? Follow up.